So in this movement here, we're looking at a 90-90 trail leg drag. And this is a fantastic movement for hip mobility because it puts us in end range hip abduction, along with working on internal and external rotation. So when we look at a lot of the drills that we do, we want to make sure that we are doing them near our end range of motion. That's what really builds our ability to sort of work near our end range of motion and connect to a lot of the tissue that's responsible for those movements. So this movement, this 90-90 position, really puts that trail leg into what would be considered an internally rotated and abducted position. So abduction being kind of that movement out to the side. So if we look at it from kind of this position here, adduction would be the hip sort of across ourselves, and then abduction being out to the side. We're also internally rotated in the sense that if we think of the femur here, we sort of rotate this way. That's considered internal rotation. We rotate the opposite way, and that's considered external rotation. Okay, so this is where this 90-90 position really shows in its utility. Okay, so by sort of doing this position, what we're going to think of here is we're going to think of sort of dragging the foot through and keeping somewhat of a neutral position with, say, like our pelvis and our torso. There might be a little bit of movement, but we don't want it to become excessive in any way. That's why we'll use the process of radiation in a second. But you can see to a certain degree here, I just want to demo the movement very quickly. You'll see we're going to abduct first. We're going to squeeze the outside and we're going to drive that foot into the ground. So the knee is going to come off first. From this abducted position, I'm going to try and drag my foot through. I'm going to keep abducting, all right? And by dragging it through, I'm actually going through external rotation as well at the hip. You can see I'll sort of end up flexing the hip too as well. As you can see, there's a lot of movements you're going through in this, and that's why it's such a great drill to kind of work near your end range. You're continuing to drag the foot through. You get to this point that you can't go any further. You'll sort of stop. You'll abduct as much as possible as well. You'll then try to sort of lift to a certain degree so that you don't have too much tension on the sort of mat and on the floor. And slowly you're going to internally rotate. You keep the pressure with the foot driving back until you return to that 90-90 position. Now, that was it in theory, but when we're performing this, remember the idea is to perform it with a high level of internal tension or internal irradiation. So we go through that process of sort of getting our position like so. We might have ourselves sort of leaning out a little bit to allow some more movement at, say, the hip, just depending on how restricted you feel. So from here, what I'd say is lean over a little bit at first, and as you feel more confident with this, you're going to try and get as upright as possible, provided there's not a crazy amount of shift from, say, pelvis and hips, okay? So we'll lean out a little bit. We'll sort of keep the spine relatively straight. We'll take a deep breath in, pack it into our lower abdomen, and then we're going to squeeze and try to get tension throughout the entire body. And I mean arms, core, hand even on the lead leg is sort of driving that knee into the floor. From here, let's go through that process. So we abduct first, we squeeze the musculature on the outside of the hip. We've still got tension running throughout the entire body. We're driving that trail foot into the ground. We drive through, we continue to drive the knee up nice and high as we drag and drag and drag. You're gonna feel all that musculature really switch on around the hip. Take an exhale from here, reset your position. It might have moved, so take that breath again. Keep driving that hand into the lead knee. Very slowly lift to a certain degree. Start driving that trail foot into the ground. Keep pushing back, and then let that knee drop. And you're actively sort of controlling down. You're not just letting the knee flop. We want to stay engaged and stay somewhat connected to the musculature that's moving throughout it. And that's what that level of sort of internal tension, that irradiation really helps us with in this position, okay? So a really amazing drill. You can see to a certain degree it's going to be very fatiguing because we're so close to our end range of motion. So just make sure you're sort of following those cues correctly. You're not compensating in any way. You're not sort of lazily performing the reps, because when you perform these movements with tension, when you're doing it as sort of best as possible and in as controlled a manner as possible, they do elicit that strength response in the body. You're not going to be able to do this for loads and loads of reps. You're only probably going to be able to do this from anywhere from sort of 3 to 6 reps, and it's going to have such a great effect on all of that musculature. You're going to feel really, really connected to it, and you're going to see your mobility, your strength near your end range of motion really increase as well, okay? So if there are any questions on that movement, I'm sure there might be, so be sure to leave a comment below or reach out to me directly. If you like the video, be sure to like it, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, be sure to subscribe to the page, all right? But for the moment, I'll see you soon.